Okay, we're recording. So hi, everybody. It's good to see. Let's see.
Hello, hello.
We have uh, myself, Michael DeChellis, Amy Bowser, Bill Edwards on the video. Jonathan's Hedinger's on the phone. We're missing Danielle, but she said she was going to be out for this meeting. But we do have some, you know, she was on a meeting on Monday. And I shared the meeting minutes, an hour ago or so for you to review from that. So she's been pretty active. Um, Let me pull up the agenda. So this is just a working meeting, guys. So we don't, we
Okay.
don't need to, we don't need to be. The recording will serve as the minutes. Jonathan, um, you're welcome. I'm just kidding, of course. Let's see, the project list and priorities document updating was something I put on the agenda. That's something we could get to if it felt relevant for our other two discussions, which are dark sky ordinance sort of project report. Just moving to get this off our plate essentially and make sure that we have incorporated everything all the good stuff we've put together. And then just an open one on climate action plan project discussion, which should be fun because we can start gearing up for that, I think, based on some of the things we've learned, kind of stumbling through the dark, no pun intended, on the dark sky ordinance as a group. Sort of what our process is, and then we can kind of incorporate that into how we're going to approach a climate action plan. I know there will be at least one member of the public will call in for that, just to help provide any resources we want. But we'll get to that when we get to it. So is there anything else that, other than that stuff, that y'all want to bring up before we get started?
No, not me.
Well, one question, if this is a working meeting, are we still potentially planning on having our regular meeting in what that would normally be in 1, 2, 3
I think
weeks?
2 weeks. It's the second Wednesday of every month, so that would be on
That's 3 weeks from this today.
Yeah.
The 14th of October.
Okay.
Yeah, 14th. Yeah, I think so, Amy. I think but that's kind of to be determined, boy.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I think so. I think that'd be the pace that would work. So okay, well, so if it's okay, let's just get to it. I've got the is it okay? Maybe what we'll do is kind of reshuffle that order, and let's get through the dark sky stuff, and we'll talk about what we might need to do to wrap that up. And then the climate action plan is really just, it's kind of the plan to plan thing, but we can talk about what kind of research we might need to do in order to start engaging with the community on something like that. Because it's a really important topic, I think, to a lot of people in the community. It feels like something, the thing that we should be working on. And there's a lot of potentially derivative things that we can do out of that. But dark sky. So I shared with the message board kind of intentionally to just kind of make that the record. But just to recap, Danielle and I had a meeting with Matthew, who's the new, he's a couple months now, he's the deputy planning director. Michael Cardos called into that, and we had sent Matthew that, per our last meeting, we needed to review with the city kind of our our approach to just codifying what we've put together. And so we sent the draft ordinance to Matthew. He had a lot of feedback. It was good feedback because it was starting to get into the nitpicky critical phase, right? Which is exactly where we want to be, because we want to make it good. And there was some discussion about what the best sort of legal approach to this ordinance was. And so I think I think what I'm really actually quite encouraged by is that they are very interested in just taking our recommendations, working with the lawyer, finishing writing the code or the ordinance, and then taking that back to us, letting us review it, and then send it on its way to the commission, with reviewing feedback in that all the way. So I think really what we need to do is gather what we've done. So Amy, you put together that introduction document, and that's going to be really relevant, because I think that's going to be a big part of what the document that we essentially send to the commission. That'll kind of be the intro and background, probably with a little bit of bolstering. And then after that, we're just going to write down specifically what our recommendations are, but we're not going to get into the weeds of augmenting the ordinance that we've already done. Their recommendation was, yeah, we're probably the better ones to do that. So why don't we'll use the draft that y'all have put together, because you've done good work. But the idea is that we'll let them move that across the finish line and then give it back to us. Because at issue were a couple of things, whether there's like a zoning overlay was really the best approach, just for technical reasons, because overlays, when they're adopted as a code, can be clunky to maintain. And we certainly don't want to start any regulation that just goes out of date within a year. And so one of Matthew's recommendations was that we try to focus more on land use. So we assign lighting zones according to land use that is articulated really well in the zoning code, actually. So while we already sort of made a list of, well, these are the zones that we think, these are the city zones that we think should be assigned to each lighting zone, that we should take that a little farther and articulate what land uses should be what zone or what lighting zone. So because that gives them the ability to base the regulation or the code on land use instead of a zoning map. Does that make sense? So practical example is, instead of doing all highway commercial is lighting zone X, instead we say any gas station can be this lighting zone. That's an example of highway commercial is the zoning zone. And gas station would be the land use approach. And so I think that's one of the tweaks that we'll have to do to what we have. And we can either use this working meeting to try to define that particular aspect right now. We could also sort of just assign it and just review it next time take 15 minutes or something and try to have another discussion where we just review it. So I'm open to either approach. I'm pretty motivated to move this across the finish line. I feel like I've learned a lot about process, but ready to get our night sky stuff behind us. So whatever's the most efficient, quickest way to get us to the finish line is my vote. Not that we're voting on anything. So that monologue is over. Feedback?
Well, do you feel that the land uses are pretty well defined that relate to dark skies?
Yeah, they're somewhat. So it's chapter 30 in the zoning thing. Let me pull that up.
I'll be right back. I'm gonna grab an iPad.
Yeah, you bet. Let's see, code of ordinances. So under chapter 30 of, I'm going to go ahead and share this so I can show you what I'm doing. Jonathan, I'm sure you've seen this before. It's just the city code.
Can you repeat what our two options were?
Yeah, I mean, well, so in relating to, so I think what we've coalesced on for our lighting regulation approach or lighting ordinance approach is the idea of lighting zones. And so the question is, how do we define where those lighting zones are enforced? And we have two options. We can either attach them to zoning zones, if that makes sense, or we can attach them simply to land use, which sort of ignores the way things are zoned. Instead, it's more like single family homes, multifamily homes, commercial. So it's not tied to what's allowed to be done in a certain area. It's tied to how you're actually using that.
And it sounded like that was the preferred option. So at this point, I guess, what do we need to do?
Yeah, so I think at this point we need to take the lighting zone recommendations and just use the table in the zoning land use in the code and assign lighting zones to the land uses that are listed. So that's
a long list.
It is.
I feel like maybe that'd be better to do, like you said, do it, unless we can just do it really fast. But if you're talking about the one you're scrolling through right now, it seems like a lot.
Yeah, so the land uses are, let's see, single family dwellings, duplexes, multifamily dwellings, accessory buildings, mobile homes, churches, schools, hospitals, clinics. I mean, seriously, it's a lot of stuff. Self-service laundry.
Yeah, I mean, we can probably kind of break it out into what we already did as far as like commercial versus residential. But I mean, it seems like one of us could maybe tackle that later. I can try. Unless you're like really want to get it done now, but it sounded like our list was, we had a couple things to do during this meeting.
Yeah, Yeah, so we could, I think that's fine. I mean, if you're happy with,
It's like connect the dots.
yeah, it really is. It's the, yeah, it's the, you know, the crazy detective in their basement putting the, you know, all the lines together kind of activity.
So I just need to assign the lighting zones that we talked about before to each one of these.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's it. And you know, maybe identify if there's anything while going through it, Amy, that feels it needs special dispensation, you know. I love that we have the armory in here. That's good fun. So for example, if you want to address, like, I don't actually see where the,
And there'd be a few things that might not be in here, like the parks.
yeah, we should definitely add anything that we, especially stuff that we already talked about, right?
Right. Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
you remember that conversation pretty well, I'm sure. I think it was a very useful one.
Yeah, I think this will be fairly straightforward, and then we can review it, and I'll just highlight any that that I feel uncertain of when I'm going through it.
Sure. Thank you so much. That's really helpful.
Yes, and you have the background since you produced a lot of this document, so you're more familiar with it than the rest of it. At least I am.
Well,
And I am.
I don't know. I missed the last meeting, so I kind of feel behind at this point.
Well, you told us to do anything we wanted to, so we did.
Oh, well, good. They're not my documents, so
Yeah.
they belong to all of us.
Right. We each have a piece of the action. So
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that, and I can do that pretty quickly, probably.
Jonathan, do you have any other questions about kind of the path forward on that stuff? I mean, there's still a couple things.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. So I think where this will culminate is in a presentation to the commission. So I'll take the task of taking essentially our two sources of info, which is really three sources. The document, Amy, that you put together.
The intro?
The intro stuff, yep. I'll take essentially the list that we have of recommendations and just list those and paste out the relevant areas of the municipal code that we've already edited. And then we'll include this breakdown, the land use breakdown that you come up with, Amy. And then one more piece to this. I mentioned. Let me look at my notes real quick. Oh, there's a couple other things that we might. So something that Michael Cardos mentioned. Well, for completeness, I should say Danielle is going to put together lumen temperature and bug rating recommendations. Bug being that aggregate rating that is now attached to all the lighting. But a question was, what's our recommendation in terms of street lighting density? And crucially, do we want to recommend that they actually remove streetlights?
It's almost like a survey. Like, it's almost like we need some sort of standard, but also survey is done of areas. like if there's a rogue street light that's really annoying or something, you know. But has anyone come across those sort of recommendations yet? As far as like in those model ordinances, or I don't remember seeing that, but I wasn't looking for it, so. There might be some sort of standard. Or
yeah,
Northwestern probably has a standard for theirs or something.
theirs is related to safety. I mean, I think most, I mean, all standards I've seen are related to safety, and that was a recommendation from the meeting on Monday that, I mean, Michael Cardos said, well, we could just punt basically and say, our recommendation could be one recommendation could be just a blanket one that says that street lighting should remain at the minimum safe density.
Yeah, because I think people's thoughts are that more is safer, and that's not really what I've come across. And so we wouldn't want to fall back to something that's got too many lights, especially because street lights can be super annoying. I guess there's a difference between street lighting in a residential area and then like the highway areas, but
yeah, and I mean the other piece is, you know, if we all feel aligned in our overall goal, which is just less light making it into the sky, you know, a recommendation around turning off street lights after certain hours, I think is a pretty easy one, and we just need to identify what those hours are. So there are some sort of nuances there, and that is kind of a newer recommendation because that's not in our recommended code right now, the recommended municipal code that we were putting together.
Might be a little bit hard to do because of the weather variability. If you use time as your criteria, because
Yeah.
you might have a blizzard in the middle of the day, which could make it very dark. So you have to be careful about that.
Well, also, you know, sunrise and sunset changes dramatically depending on what time of year you're in.
Right.
do we know if any lights are linked to a sensor? Because I don't think most lights would be on in the middle of the day if there's a blizzard anyway, unless they're linked to a sensor that, you know, like you have in your yard. Like I have little solar lights, and if it's really dark at a certain point during the day, they'll go on. It's a very simplified thing, but I don't know if city lights work like that or not.
Well, where I am at the condos behind Albertsons, they have the lights go on, and they tend to go on when there's still a lot of light out.
Yeah.
I haven't looked into it to see what the situation is, but there's no need to have lights on. I walk around, when I walk around town, I see people's porch lights on all the time, all day long. And yeah, part of it is we want to use less energy, but and I don't know as far as the reflecting down is concerned. I never thought about it, but if you're reflecting your light down, if you have good reflectors, you may be able to use less light and for you know, the electricity than if you didn't have them face down. I don't know.
Yeah, I think with street. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jonathan.
So I guess I wanted to make sure I was understanding. So with Mr. Cardos's question, aren't our restrictions designed to kind of limit the amount of light, so it doesn't necessarily matter about density as much if we're doing them in a way that is more appropriate than they are currently?
Yeah, I think so, Jonathan. I mean, I think it's kind of probably an all of the above thing, though, right? I mean, if you think about what's motivating him as well, it's simply cheaper and easier to put less lights in. And so especially if we have, an expansion of city territory or any of that other stuff, or new neighborhoods going in, this dark sky ordinance could affect the density of lighting that they put in. But he did even go farther and say, should we be taking lights out?
Well, that relates in part as to the criteria they used to put them in the first place.
Jonathan dropped off.
Things change, certainly. Buildings are put up that weren't there before, and so forth and so on. And I don't know that anybody is really on top of the lighting situation per se, other than saying, hey, we build a new house, so we need a light pole on the corner there or some,
yeah.
I don't know what criteria they're using.
Yeah, that's something that Danielle could answer, but I think Bill, the bottom line is they're using whatever the engineer at the time says is the right answer, and it may be built on some kind of lighting standard. But the point is that this code could affect that. And by the way, Jonathan dropped off the phone, so we'll have to wait for him to call back in.
Okay.
To get more clarification. But the bottom line on that is I think we have we may have a little more research to do on that. It's a good question, I think, because it does provide some concrete guidelines going forward. Yeah.
I wanted to go back 5 seconds. Bill, I think that we were talking about when they might turn lights off, and I think a lot of that is lights being left on really late at night. So it's more of an overall use pattern than it is, say, due to weather. It's like if you have a blizzard in the middle of the night, you're probably still having the same amount or even less cars on the road than you would on a different night. So that doesn't necessarily matter. So it's more of like after 11 p.m., these zones of light, street lights get turned off or something like that. Less so about like weather and that kind of stuff. And I think that can be really useful because no one's actually using them, or limited people are using them. And I don't really know what our streetlights do because I don't stay up that late, but.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't have any idea.
I think that is the bottom line. Well articulated, Amy. It's really about, do we need lights on? Do we need as many lights on at 3 a.m. as we have on at
8 p.m.
8 p.m. And I think the answer for most reasonable people is absolutely not. There's not going to be as much density of people that are out there using. That doesn't mean take all lights away. We obviously still need to have safety, but the idea that we could save a significant amount of light pollution by just turning some lights off at 11 p.m. Has a lot of merit. And it's kind of agnostic, even, that kind of guideline is kind of agnostic to even what time of year it is, or what,
Well, that's right. Absolutely.
It's just simply, we want to be, if we're putting in, especially if we're putting in new circuits and stuff, we want to provide the ability to control those, even with just simple timers, but control those so that every other light, for example, turns off at 11 p.m. I mean, I can tell you from like at the lagoon about 8 months ago, they turned off half the lights around the lagoon. No one's noticed except me. And
'Cause you're
it is
doing this.
it's a remarkable change. It is so much better. I can go on my back porch and now look at the Milky Way. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons, yeah. One of the main reasons for doing it.
Yeah,
Well, and I know like on my street, we have one of those historic street lights. I think that's cool in theory. It is on all night long and it has no shielding. You know, it's just bright everywhere. Like that, it lights up my house at night inside. Not to the point where it really bothers us, but I'm sure there's other people closer to it that are. So if those, I don't think we need that past 11 p.m. or 10 p.m. Like I would love if those turned off.
So why don't we put a nominal recommendation in there for 11 p.m. on a set, you know, on a set of lights.
Yeah, we probably need to like do we need to distinguish which ones that we?
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, we can include recommendations on. At this point, we can include, you know, a recommendation that says that when possible, you know, from the hours of 11 p.m. to say 5 a.m. The city is in dark sky mode, so to speak, and that when possible, timers should be put on lights or lights should be put on timers, and lights should be turned off to the minimum safe lighting level. You know, something like that.
And do you mean that like citywide? So, for example, there's some newer building on near exit 330. I never know what that road's called. That has a lot of lights on. Can we like, for businesses like that that don't need those lights because no one's working, but they're lighting, I don't know, they're just lighting their buildings up. I
Are you
would love
talking
to
about
include.
Tech Electric?
And there's another building over there, but yeah. And I don't mean to, maybe I shouldn't have pointed out the specific
No, I mean, it's
on
fine.
here, but
We're not
I just
throwing
feel
them
like they
under
have
the
a lot
bus.
of
We're
lights
just
and they're all like
asking
pointing up.
Yeah. I think there's, well, and so that's a difference. So I think we're talking about, we have to be kind of careful. I don't think that we should, I don't think we can in this regulation tell people what time they can have lights on and off, and we could, but that's pretty heavy handed. But
yeah, I think it'd be hard to enforce that.
Yeah, I think people would object to that.
Sure. I mean, the question, but a question that I think is, well, actually what we should be doing is recommending any streetlights that are owned by the city and controlled by the city and Northwestern Energy and others, like public lighting on our streets and throughways. We do, you know, we can provide some guidance on exactly when those should be on, because those are essentially, those switches are controlled by the public.
Right. No, okay, that makes sense. I just wanted to know what all we were talking about.
Yeah.
And that would be a really great start. And then if we can take this further someday, I don't mean right now, but like that other stuff could come with either potentially some sort of incentive or just education of businesses. But if we can give them an incentive, and that's what I'm saying, not right now, I feel like this is big enough for our plate, but that'd be kind of a cool goal, is to take it to step 2 where we can get more of the community involved as opposed to just being regulatory.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, proactive, right? Like having people, you know, feel committed to keep conserving our night sky, just as something proactive and fun for people to do would be great. Actually, that's very energizing for me. So I agree, Amy.
We'll put that on the bottom of the list.
So I think we've landed. We have 2 then. So I think there's like really 2 things then, you know, kind of holistic things. you know, Amy, we have the land use table, and then the things I articulated, and then we have the some of these other recommendations. We put all that into one document, and then also we need to assign somebody to do a presentation to the commission, and it is absolutely not me. Somebody else is doing it.
Well, Amy has done a lot of the background on this.
Yeah.
She feels
I don't.
like she would.
I have a lot of this kind of stuff happening at work right now. I don't know that I can put the time in. I guess it depends on when this would happen.
I think that whoever can attend the meeting from the conservation board to field questions is absolutely appropriate. If you don't want to take point on a presentation to the, I mean, you know, we'll all work on that document I just articulated. But and then that's going to be kind of our official record that gets attached to the commission meeting minutes or to the agenda and all that stuff that they review. Then we'll have a specific set of requests, which is, will you please take this and instruct the city staff to turn this into an ordinance that we can then review. I mean, that's going to be our specific request to the commission, that they should then vote on. And the only sort of missing piece there is I think it would be helpful to do an actual presentation to them in addition to that. And, you know, beg, borrow, steal some of the slides from the Dark Sky Association, just to give them just like a real clear background. And that'll also be a great spot for, you know, anybody in the public who's interested to come and get educated at the same time as the commissioners.
So I feel pretty comfortable with that introductory stuff. As far as the technical stuff, I don't feel like I could answer any of those questions.
Cool. Well,
so
Danielle's
maybe Danielle and I could tag team it, but I have like 8 events coming up for work. So if this is happening in December, or something, but if this is happening in the next 3 weeks, I don't know. But I don't think it's gonna move that fast. So maybe we can just kind of see how it goes.
I don't think it's gonna move that fast.
Okay.
I think what we're doing is we're having our conversation about this now. I'd like to move on to the next topic.
Okay.
We'll have a similar conversation next month, where we just kind of adopt the document that we put together, and then I think Danielle would be willing to do point on the presentation, but you would need to be there to help sort of communicate the background.
Yeah, that sounds more doable.
Yeah. So if
sorry,
you're cool,
I got a little scared. I'm like, no.
No. I'm not.
I've got 10 presentations I'm doing right now.
Yeah, no problem. I think Danielle is appropriate to do it, and we, you know, it's a presentation. It'll ultimately it's the document that we're putting together. It's the official recommendations. The presentation is just a pretty picture show.
As long as they ask the questions you know the answers to.
That's true. Well, I tell you, every presentation I do, I usually have about 4 slides, but then about 30 backup slides.
That's smart. Yeah, I'm a little bit like that too. I do present on a lot of stuff at work that I don't really know about sometimes.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I love that. Hey, it's important to have an active imposter syndrome going at all times. Like, what? Wait, you think I'm the expert at this?
I just tell them, I'm like, oh, well, I'll have my boss answer that question.
Well, are y'all okay with then kind of what we've outlined that we'll do, and then let's just move on to the next topic? Is that?
Yep, sounds good.
Is that okay?
We can do that. Do we need Jonathan for numbers? Because he seems to have, or are we fine with 5 of us now? So we're more than enough.
No, this is fine. I mean, we're not voting on anything. This is a working meeting, and and we have a quorum anyway, because we have 3 out of 5.
Okay.
But that might change, because Bill was saying, we do have potentially these youth member applications, which is exciting. So we get to grow our board. And
I have a question about that as well. So some of us are going to be coming up on a year.
mm-hmm.
Are we the ones who, we don't do the advertising and stuff for like, how does that all work?
Oh, so yeah. So Faith will post that there are, that board members' terms are coming up. And so she'll post that I think there's 3 board members, Amy, you, Bill, and Jonathan are all the term is coming up at the end of this calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be on the board after that, you'll just need to turn in an application.
Basically
reapply, but typically the commission is very excited to have returning board members, and then you get appointed to another 2-year term. And you can resign at any time, if that's but if you like what we're trying to do and all that stuff, it's nice. It's nice. So then those will be, and then that way 2 of the 5 non-youth board members will come up at the end of 2021, and then 3 of them, and then 2 of them, and 3. So you kind of have that rolling thing.
Yeah, and that's good because whoever stays, like, I feel like we've learned a lot as a group. So we don't want to lose all that knowledge so that whoever's next has to start over again. So
yeah, actually, I mean, that's a good segue, Amy. I was thinking about this. I was sort of kind of found ourselves in the position of needing to sort of defend our actions to Michael and Matthew on Monday a little bit.
That's how it felt?
No. They're really helpful, but they're also, I think, they pose the question of, well, why are you writing an ordinance?
Because we don't know what we're doing.
and that was basically the answer, right? The answer was, well, I mean, we're a bunch of volunteer people, and we honestly have no idea. Yeah, I mean, and this is just some light criticism of the city. I mean, they're really busy, but the bottom line is like we've been given some broad tasks, and the idea is, if this is kind of what you get if you don't regularly attend our meetings, kind of thing. And that's not.
Yeah, but it sounded like that meeting was super helpful, because my first instinct when I read your email was, oh no, all that work. And then I was like, well, no, this is good, because we needed to have that feedback to know how to do future stuff.
Absolutely. And actually, I would say in terms of the exercise of doing this writing, which I know really frustrated a little bit Danielle and Lexi, it didn't feel like it did not feel like a waste of time, because in the end, Matthew was like, yeah, I mean, we are going to take this and go with it.
I'm glad. Otherwise, that would have been.
Yeah, because, I mean, but they just need to sort of bless it in terms of making sure that it complies with state and federal law and yada, yada. So now we're in kind of a process discussion, but it really matters kind of how we do this as a group moving forward. I think we ran with the ordinance rewrite probably farther than we should have, but otherwise the process that we've taken for dark sky has been fairly good. we seem to be pretty good at throwing research together. And then summarizing and not talking about it, not talking about it properly, and then, summarizing it well as a team and distilling it down. We seem to do a good job of figuring out how to communicate something going forward. And I think we'll get probably a lot better at that. And that's important because I think the stakes are probably going to get a little higher. I'd very much I think we do need to make sure that after we've put together sort of our minimum level of available information and we've put together our intention on what we're going to do, that we then have an alignment meeting with, that we have an alignment meeting with the city, and we do not proceed or waste our time on anything until we get that alignment meeting.
I think that sounds smart. Just make sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
We don't end up in like left field and they wanted us to go the other way or whatever. So
yeah, and in this case, there was kind of no harm, no foul. There's been there's going to be no wasted effort, and they can tell that we know what we're doing. I mean, we're trying, and we're smart.
Yeah, and this one's a little more tangible as far as what the outcome was meant to be than say what did you call the climate action plan? To me, that feels really nebulous. Like,
yeah,
that could be all sorts of things. So that would be a good one to make sure that we're checking in.
Yeah.
Wherever that goes.
Which is what we can get into now, if you want. Now that we've kind of talked through our night sky process, we could get into that.
Has Jonathan left us then?
Yeah, it looks like he's off.
Oh, okay.
He hasn't called. He hadn't called back.
Maybe he lost his service or something.
Okay. Well, are you ready to go into a discussion then of the action plan?
I think so, Bill.
Works for
me. Take this?
Would you like some background?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'll try to make this as clear and concise as I can. I'm going to start with July 1st of 2019 because that's the date when the governor gave an executive order issuing and creating a council of some 44 people appointed throughout the state to be put together to come up with recommendations for Montana's climate solution plan. That's what it's called now. The final product is called a climate solution plan. There are two parts to this document. The first part was the charge to the 44 people who were asked to go through and have meetings with people in various parts of the state and find out recommendations from them. And the other one was to join in what's called the U.S. Climate Alliance. Now, the U.S. Climate Alliance is made up of some 25 states or so who have agreed basically that they are going to aim toward preparing for climate impacts, reducing the greenhouse gas emissions with a goal of neutrality by 2035 and by 2050 completely switched over for electrical usage. So the alliance is bipartisan. There are 3 Republican states that are in this alliance, along with some 22 states that are run by Democrats. And that's very important because we want to make this a nonpartisan thing, much as we can. Rather, it's referred to as bipartisan coalition of governors committed to reducing the greenhouse gases, along with the Paris Accords. So that's the basic idea. Originated at the governor's level, set up the council, The council went through and got recommendations from people and came up with a final report. And that's the action plan that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of background things that can be tossed into the pot, such as 2017 saw the largest fire season since the big burn in 1910 in Montana. So fire is one of the issues that's being related more and more to climate change. I'll show you what it looks like. The cover looks like this. It's a nice picture of Montana in the cover. And Jonathan actually did an article on this that I suggest that he give the background, but if he's not with us, I'll just go ahead. The document itself starts out with a 2-page letter from the governor, basically giving the charge to the 44 people as to what they need to do. The document, the final document, the plan that just came out recently, has a background area on it, a couple of pages of background, list of recommendations that fall into some 3 different areas. I'll just read those areas quickly to you. One of them, the first one, is preparing Montanans for climate impacts. The idea that the impact's already starting because the temperature already has gone up approximately 3 degrees. So the impact's already here in that sense. The second part to the document are strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And there's a listing of some 7 here, things like energy efficiency, beneficial electrification, renewable energy, transportation, tribal nation and community efforts, and priority state, regional, and federal measures. And then the third part is capturing innovative opportunities in Montana's response to climate change and addressing the needs of the workers and the communities in transitions. They make quite a point of saying that when we go through the transition and go away from the fossil fuels, we have to do it in such a way that people are going to keep the economy going and be able to. So that's important. And so training goes into that for the new windmills, etc.
Right, yeah, like solar and wind.
Yeah, right. And then the last 2 sections are moving Montana's economy to net greenhouse gas neutrality through innovation and advanced manufacturing, building resilience. That's a word which a lot of people are associating with climate change, is having resilience to the change and the change in conditions as well, to prepare Montana's communities, economy, and workers for the transitions. So that's basically it. Now, I don't know whether I've given you a good enough capsule picture of that, of what's happened here, but it was a 2-layered thing. First, the governor set up the council. They went out and talked to people through the state, and then they came up with some 50 recommendations put into these 3 areas that I mentioned: the strategies, the preparing, and the capturing opportunities. So if you have questions about that, the document itself, now I did not take the time to do an exhaustive study of the document. It's 72 pages, and I didn't think we were quite ready for that, either me, myself, or the rest of you. But that's the document, and if you'd like to see it, there it is. There have been a number of newspaper articles that summarized a lot of this too. As I say, Jonathan did that in one of the articles that he wrote. So he's got some background on it too. There it is. How about that?
Well, I like that, Bill. You know, do you think, I did go through and read this exhaustively because it's interesting. Do you think that, if you can see, I'm sharing my screen now and I just pulled it up, just the PDF version of it. Do you think that this could serve as a template for a climate action plan for our town? I mean, is there enough? I mean, some of these headings are really good ways to organize things.
Well, in application, one of the things that I talked to Jonathan about on the phone was what might we do in terms of meeting with the commissioners and or the county commissioners as well to inform them of the existence of this document and what it might mean. And he said, if I understood him correctly, that he was going to meet with one of the people who was on the council, and that he could, if we wanted to, and maybe you can talk with him about that, Michael, that this person from Bozeman might come over and talk to our commissioners about the action plan and how it might apply here. But I want you to talk to Jonathan about that, because he's done some background work on it already. And he said he was going to meet with one of the members of the council, if I understood him correctly, in the not too distant future. But again, from my standpoint as an educator, we need to let people know that this is out there and that it's being worked on, and that we want to somehow solicit some input into this, in addition to all that input that's already gone into it with the meetings they've had all over the state for dealing with the recommendations. You can take that and run with it any way you wish, but that's my recommendation, that we try to carry this a little bit further and inform, first of all, the city commissioners, and if the county commissioners are willing to have a joint meeting on this or whatever, to inform them as well. I don't know how much they know about it. I mean, people have heard about action plan, climate action plan, what's it mean, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, this is one format that has come up through our own state. And I think it would be not a very good idea just to drop it from our standpoint.
Oh, I mean, I think it's probably one of the most valuable arrows we have in our quiver, because it's quite official, you know?
I was just wondering though, like, if our politics change as far as the governor, what's our thought on like what's going to happen with it?
He says that in his letter. He states in his letter, you know, that, and makes a point of saying it's a bipartisan thing at this point, the alliance that he is talking about with the other states. And his hope, I'm sure, is that it's going to remain as much that way as possible, rather than making it the R's versus the D's.
Well, and maybe that's also a way that if we feel, I haven't read it, so I'll say if we feel this is valid by us starting to adopt or work towards these priorities that we have in the state and our town, that could support its continuing, which is totally not the purview of our board, but it could be a secondary thing of like.
Well, I think one thing would be, how can you see down at this level, for instance, applying some of these things? Some of these things, admittedly, we probably wouldn't touch or wouldn't do much with, but even from the standpoint of educating people to the point that something's being done here or an attempt is being made here, I think is important for people to know. And, you know, even the idea of what does GHG stand for? Well, we all know what it stands for, but the guy in the street probably doesn't. You don't have any idea what it stands for. And, but we have a bias, and we have some background in this area, and we feel it's important, and that's why we're where we are on the board. But getting the word out to other people and letting them know some of the background and that this work has already been done and that we're starting, we're moving along as a society along these tracks. So anyway, I think we're committed to it. And I think the council members have undoubtedly, as a man on the street, have heard something about it, but they probably couldn't tell you much about this, or nine people out of 10 probably, don't care that much at this point, because they don't necessarily feel here like the people.
Their house didn't burn down.
Yeah, their house didn't burn down, or they didn't get flooded out, or they didn't get knocked over by a hurricane. But,
yeah, but that number of people being affected is certainly getting bigger, it feels like.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Yale Project for Communication on Climate Change has just published their updated survey results around, and I encourage you all to go look at that if you're interested. It's the Yale Center for Climate Change Communication, and what they do is they've looked at American sentiment and sentiment around the world through detailed surveying around various questions related to the climate thing. And a lot that the public opinion is moving pretty quickly on whether it's happening or not. There is still a huge lag up to and including this latest survey results in people believing that climate change is going to affect them. So they all think it's a problem. They think it's, all that, but that needle hasn't moved much at all in the 2 years since the last survey results came out. So I think that piece that you're talking to, people are paying a lot of attention to, because they assume that when people believe it's going to start affecting them, that then action happens.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that for anything.
Oh, absolutely. But you see, part of what's happening here, and this is all getting mixed up together, whether we like it or not, is that those people in the lower third or so of our economy are getting hit the hardest.
Yes.
And they're not the ones who are in a position to say a whole lot about it or to control a lot of it. And that's part of the problem, because the people at the upper end say, oh, well, it's not that big a deal. I can get another, I can get a bigger humidifier or cooler. I don't have to worry about that. And so they don't see all the people who are suffering because of it. And even if we have the pictures on the front page of the paper every night of a hurricane or a flooding or a fire or whatever it may be, look at all the whales that died. My gosh, 300 whales died off the coast of Australia not long ago, and they don't know why.
Yeah.
And I'll bet you eventually they're going to say it's related to the pollution in the ocean and, and a number of other things. And look at the elephants in Africa. They had 300 elephants die from drinking water that was contaminated with blue-green algae.
Yeah,
in Rwanda.
So what you're saying, I know you're coming up with these big examples, but I mean, we definitely are seeing this locally.
No,
so I don't know if we need to connect those events.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, whatever the issue is with the fish in the river, the fire. I mean, obviously the Bridger Hills fire just got real close to us and impacted people we know. Then there's fires big around a lot of the state, and it impacts a lot of agricultural resources. And from my perspective, pest management is being impacted as well. It's a little abstract at this point for us who aren't we're all scientists in our own way, but I mean, like, we're not research scientists saying this is directly correlated with climate change. That might be a little harder, especially with our local impacts, but
well, there's some ways out of that, Amy. So, I have been throwing resources since we started this discussion. in our Google Drive. Climate background reference. One is the Montana Climate Action Plan from 2007, so it's a little dated. But it does attempt to review some of the impacts to Montana that's coming from this.
Okay.
There is some in the document I'm showing, and we can actually go up to that. Before I went away from this spot though, on page 55, I did want to point out, Amy, you had mentioned a way back that you were wondering what the state position might be if there's a change in party affiliation of the governor or whatever. And there are some clues into that if you look into the recommendations that are put forth in this. So one that's pretty relevant to us because this is who they're talking about.
Right. Yeah, I saw that, the community
mitigation planning, and you know, there's a lot of shoulds in here, right, which aren't very helpful. But there are some ways that they're trying specifically to connect communities. So they have they are going to attempt to connect people's mitigation strategies. This is the one that's, I think, the most important. I was highlighting this earlier. Montana State University hosts an online map of existing community and tribal nation mitigation and adoption plans. So that could be a really good resource for us, looking at concrete mitigation and adaptation things that we can do within the borders of our community in order to support, you know, a climate action. But I also wanted to show you, Amy, there is on every single one of these recommendations that are put forth, there is discussions of if there was a dissenting council member, and who that was and what their reasoning was. And so, so O'Hare is the president of the Montana Chambers of Commerce, for example. I think he's president. But yeah, Todd O'Hare, president and CEO of the Montana Chamber of Commerce. But you can kind of get an idea of who they are, where they're from, what their, you know, role was. There are some recommendations, for instance, I think like electric car infrastructure, I saw had lots of dissenting views.
I wonder what, it feels like such a far reach to me, but I know you're really into it. And so there's gotta, you know, I don't know a lot about it.
Well, yeah, and I'd be happy, you know, so I think part of what we're doing right now is planning, we're kind of planning how to get educated as a group.
Yes, I have that feeling here.
And yeah, when it comes to like electric car stuff, I mean, guys, I can take up an entire meeting. I can give you a presentation on that. I've actually done several electric car presentations in the community. I'm all over that, and I think that'll be part of something that we could do as we're sort of getting our act together. I really like the idea of using this, that, you know, kind of as Bill pointed out, having this as one of the key things that we hold up and say that this is what we're responding to as a community.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say, is that Bill, you said you really wanted to educate the commission or the city council on this. I just lost the term. But I agree with that, but I feel like we should present it with, this is how we are going to take what the state passed, or whatever. I am losing all my terms right now, but whatever the state's doing, and this is how we're going to take what they said and address it towards Livingston.
Yeah.
I feel like just going in and educating on this, I kind of just feel like they would tell us to go to tell them what to do. Because I'm sure they all care at a certain level, but just like everyone, we have so much going on. It's, you know, so if we could take this and say, but this is how, this is what this document is, and we took that along with these other resources and created what we want to do for Livingston, I think that would be the most effective way to communicate it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Hi, Joni.
Hello, Joan.
You could, well, you're on mute, but
Yeah, sorry I'm late, but I'm here.
oh my gosh, no problem. We did get into this, and this is a working meeting, Joni, so you can just, we don't have to worry about formality on input from the public. We just really value, we really value you know, anybody in the public joining our meetings. But Amy, to articulate what you had just said, I think that's it. I think that's the way forward. I think we take this pretty comprehensive report, we hold this up as, you know, the primary document that we can sort of respond to, and then we come up with a laundry list of local strategies that can meet some of the goals that are outlined in this report. And there's so much to lean on. I mean, we've got
yeah, no reason to reinvent the wheel. Especially if there's potentially support like from the state at some point, maybe even now, I don't know without looking it up, as far as like funding to do some of this stuff. So we might as well follow what the state's doing, unless we have, for some reason, or like want to push it. I could only see us wanting to push it further, potentially, depending on what it says. Not adopting something, unless it doesn't have anything to do with it.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, the alliance was essentially, we're talking about the U.S. Climate Change Alliance, Joni.
Oh, okay, okay.
25 states or so whose governors have decided that they're going to work with climate change and go after the Paris Accord objectives. Anyway, we're talking about that now. Those 25 states, California put in a lump sum to start the project going. So funding has come at least from California, and I assume from the other states, certainly as far as the governors are concerned and the time they put in. But it's, Joni, as I mentioned, 3 of the 25 governors are Republicans. So they're calling this a bipartisan action plan.
Oh, that's fantastic. Is this the document that they have put out?
Yes.
Okay.
well, this is the document that the Montanans climate.
Not the Alliance, I'm sorry. The Alliance didn't put this out. This is the 44 people in the council for Montana that did this, Joni.
Okay. And what is the actual title of this? And then I'll be quiet.
Oh, you don't, this is the Montana Climate Solutions Plan.
Okay.
You can just Google that, or if you'd like, our board has a Google Drive that's available.
Okay.
To anybody, and it's
okay.
Meaning it's a public Google Drive, and that's linked to the city website.
Okay. Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Okay, great.
Well, and since this just came out, if we're starting on this, I mean, I feel like this is the discussion, but if we have something concrete in a few months, that's kind of awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting into, I think, an area that we have a lot of community knowledge about, right? Like we're very, I mean, I'll I'll thump my chest a little bit. I really have been just like way too interested in this stuff for way too long, in terms of like solutions-based stuff. And so I think I could come up with a lot of solutions. And I know, Amy, you could, and Bill, you can. Joni, I know for sure that YBCC would have a lot of ways to sort of take the big recommendations that are in this Solutions Council report and really localize them for us into concrete actions and strategies that we could potentially adopt as a community.
I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah. In fact, I'm making a presentation October 1st at the annual meeting for 5 minutes to do basically what I did here, explain a little bit of the background and what the Montana Climate Solution Plan basically is.
Yeah, Bill, by the way that you presented that was fantastic. Like, it really was. It was just very articulate. I agree with you. I think there is going to be some manner of sort of public outreach and education that has to happen, especially, you know, we need to decide what we're asking of the public too. Amy, I think that first step where we take the sort of the big things in this report and then we turn them into maybe our understanding of local impacts so far, one, our understanding of how that's going to impact things in the future, two, and then also what our at least initial list of possible things to do locally are. So maybe those three things. And then
we also have the energy, what's that thing called? Energy core
yep.
data. So that would, we already have a lot of numbers, so.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's kind of the next question for the group for me is, there are different strategies to looking at this stuff. I think that this is more than, you know, coming up with a massive climate plan for the city is more than a volunteer board and even, you know, supporting organizations can do.
Well, and we're small, so.
And we're small. So the thought is, you know, how do we provide some direction and maybe even ask the city to put sort of some money towards more analysis and concrete action on what we're doing next. And so what I mean by that is, I mean, Energy Core is a perfect example, but Energy Core is going away, or at least right now.
And defunded.
Yeah, it's been defunded. So then what's the backfill for our community? I mean, we're the ones that are sort of watching that effort as the conservation board. YBCC is certainly one of the driving forces about that happening. I mean, there's sort of a supervisory role that we have, and do we want to express that by creating some intention that we put before the commission? So that could be some resolutions that we ask the commission to adopt. I mean, a really simple resolution is, we believe that climate change is happening. We think that it's going to impact our community, you know, in these ways. And we direct the city manager to look at how to affect these potential impacts, and come back with a report. And then that would be kind of the first step in a resolution. And then the city manager comes back and says, well, I can't do that because I don't have the staff to do that. And then the commission says, okay, well, then here is the money in the budget for the staff to do that. right? So I mean, there'd have to be a process that supports it, but the first step is some manner of aligning resolution that states intention from that comes from the commission. And that's really the way that things got moving when I was down in Austin, was that they had a series of resolutions that took a lot of work on behalf of the public, but when those got through the city council, they created sort of the the overall intentions
Mm-hmm.
that made action in the city government, and those. I think it's really helpful to create some resolutions that allow the city to express the will of the people, sort of an intention behind that. So I think my recommendation is that we try to move towards something like that with this research that we're doing. And we don't have to, yeah, we don't have to answer that today, but I'd love to see it moving that way, because I think that if we try to come up with what specifically we're doing here, there are a few like low-hanging fruit items, like electric cars are fairly straightforward. Energy efficiency stuff, maybe. We don't control the building code, but we can certainly control it in government buildings, but that's a small impact on GHG overall in our community. Not saying we don't do it. I'm just saying, like, if we're looking for maximal impact, I think the spending time on a resolution to sort of codify the intention of the community is time well spent for us.
Okay, I would wonder if the fact that our community created a conservation board to make recommendations, if that already says the will of the community. I'm not in opposition to what you're saying. Given the urgency of climate change, I wonder if it would be possible to do both at the same time. You are talking about low-hanging fruit. I may be naive, but I don't believe that if the Conservation Board made a recommendation that city and county vehicles that are aged out be replaced with electric ones, that anybody would feel stepped on by that. I wonder if it's possible to do both at the same time. So there's an overarching thing, and some of what you call, Michael, the low-hanging fruit, that you know, there's just no opposition to it. I just can't imagine people, you know, feeling in any way like unheard or not respected if the board came forward with something like that, because it's a money saver. That's why, because it benefits everybody in the city, and we can make that case easily. And I will say also that that's something that I could feel we could find, you know, maybe we could find a few people to work on, like I told you earlier. So anyway, that's just a thought, and maybe given your experience, Michael, in Texas, it sounds like maybe, you know, maybe that doesn't set right with how you think things should move forward.
No, I don't think so, Johnny. I appreciate that. I think we can come up with a list of low-hanging fruit and pick the top 3 and just go for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just, you know, it was real. I think the reason I was articulating this is it is really helpful, though. I mean, I think you're right. Doing both is probably the answer, but it was really helpful to have the city council there, you know, essentially put their necks on the line and say, you know, no, this is the will of the people. People don't care. You know, I guess the other piece is, and this is why I'd very much like to have more attention paid to this. I think, you know, I think one way for the community to express themselves is if the community is serious about creating an adaptation plan and a mitigation plan for climate change in our community, that we need somebody paid on staff working on that. And the only way to do that is to state big goals, because that's the only way we can carve out that space in the budget.
Mhm.
And I think that we will get more bang for our buck, so to speak, if we do that sooner rather than later. So that's kind of why I think that trying to move towards some kind of resolution that the commission can adopt, and that gets out in front of the public, that takes it on, you know, that says specifically, we believe in climate change. We think that this is something that's happening. We believe as a community, it's our responsibility to our future to look at both, you know, mitigation strategies, as well as how to adjust our community so that our carbon emissions go down, because the economic reality of the future is that we need a carbon-free society. And so if we're if we're not adapting and we're being reactive instead of proactive, then it's going to end up costing us a lot more as a community in the end.
Right.
You know,
So, Michael, is that the kind of resolution you're thinking of, like what you just?
Yeah.
Very general one, and
yeah.
And maybe what was the community you came from?
Austin.
Austin. Maybe we could, your board could look at Austin's and, you know, have one, you know, springboard.
Yeah, and there are other communities, and, you know, going back to this Montana Climate Solutions Plan, that one bullet listed that the Montana system does, the Montana University system does maintain a list of all sort of the local climate initiatives, and I think we can leverage a lot of those as well. We don't have to borrow too much from, I mean, there's a lot of work that's being done here in Montana on this. So yeah, I mean, so what do we do? I think that's the question is I think for now, maybe where we are is we take this thing, Bill, that you've made sure that we're looking at, and we use this as our launching point. And then, Amy, we take your recommendation and essentially comb through the document, probably individually, and just brainstorm. Like, this is a no idea is a bad idea phase, right? We'll tear all the ideas down later. Right now, it's you know, both pie in the sky and small ideas alike, that are sort of local expressions of the things that are outlined in this document. And then there are kind of whole swaths of areas that we can look at, like electric car infrastructure that's fairly straightforward, that really could support, you know, this going forward.
More friendly bike roads.
Yeah, no.
Which may not actually be that easy, but that's what I keep thinking about.
Well, and then, you know, I mean, recommendations to the tree board on certain types of trees to plant around town, or, you know, or a serious, you know, there are different tree species that have greater carbon sequestration properties, and they have and the way that they grow, it's just, there are some trees that are actually carbon negative over their lifetime.
Well, just promoting adding trees.
Right.
Help residents, like my street could use 10 more trees, and it's like, come on people, plant the trees. And that actually helps a lot with cooling and everything. So I think you're right that since I haven't read it, I definitely would like to do that, and then create a list of stuff that kind of broad, like your resolutions, and then some more specific things, and then maybe we can all come back together.
Yeah. And
I think
what we can do right now.
I think Yellowstone Bend can help with that too. I mean, the other groups, conservation groups in the county probably could help with it too if we made them aware that we were going to do this and kind of do it in conjunction with other people. They're all citizens too. And I'd like to see them be aware of what's going on as well as we are.
Oh, sure. I know that Jim Berg has a big old list in his head of things, for example.
Right.
And maybe that's something we can talk about, is creating some survey or something that we can get. Maybe that's like too much, but we can't just poll the people who are obvious on conservation boards and environmental boards. Like that's picking the biased fruit, like, oh, we like these people. And I know that's not what's being recommended, but I feel like it needs to be a little bit more standardized. Sorry, my dog's barking. A little more standardized across the community. So we need a way to, if we can, get public input from other people as well.
And well, actually, there was, to a certain extent, that occurred with the census they were doing, because people came up with, they were very much in favor of improving the environment. That was shown by the results they got. So we know there are a lot of people out there who are interested.
Do you mean from the growth survey?
Yep.
I'm wondering if we can, well, they published the data on that, so I wonder if we can use some of that to support this as well. And I did read through that, but I can't remember if there's specific like language on climate.
Yeah, I'll admit I didn't either, Amy. I usually gobble that stuff up when it comes out, but that latest survey summary that came out, what, like 3 weeks ago, I still haven't digested that.
Well, I didn't read it. I was just, oh, go ahead.
I bet PCEC would be able to answer that question really quickly.
Well, if only Jonathan hadn't dropped off the call. I'm always looking for good things to give Jonathan a hard time about.
Oh.
Yeah, John, I think you're right. We've got, so good. So and obviously that's just available at the Burton site anyway. It's in one of Faith's emails. I'll make sure that makes it to the meeting summary I send out. Let me just type that.
Maybe in the meantime, we can just let these groups know that this is something we're going to be discussing and that we would really like to have input. We don't need to put it in survey form. Just say, email us or come to the meeting or find one of us somewhere and tell us about it, which is hard right now because I don't even leave my house. So, but you know what I mean? It doesn't need to be so formal.
You're right, Amy. I think just asking, Joan, you're here, YBCC, just set it out to the membership, say, the City Conservation Board. Well, one, they can join our message board anytime they want. But also if they want to just we're looking for climate solutions in our community, and
opinions about it.
And if they if they, you know, because I think the process that we've laid out that's loose and may be subject to change and all that stuff is, we think that if we take this climate report, the climate solutions report, and we take that and then we leverage it and other communities' recommendations to come up with a list of individualized local solutions, that if we have that really big list so that people can digest that as, you know, because what I think where people start to say no to things very quickly is when they don't understand the impact of what they're saying. And so creating that list really helps people understand the kinds of things that you know, climate action in this community might be. So it's a really useful list to have. And then we kind of go from there. There might be some things that we cherry pick that we try to run with without any kind of overarching resolutions. But it could also be, if it's a comprehensive enough list, I mean, it really bolsters, I think, the position that this is something that city staff should be looking at. By the way, we should solicit city staff as well.
Yeah, too bad Jonathan's not here so we can give him some homework to go contact all these people.
Okay, well, I can at least write down that. I mean, it's a pretty simple request right now. It's,
yeah.
Hey, do y'all have, you know, send the conservation board any and all ideas for, you know, addressing climate change, both mitigation and adaptation in our community.
And who does that go to, Michael?
I think a lot of people right now. I mean, I think it's the idea would be, it's giving people a chance to talk about solutions, and then we'll compile the list and make sure that list ultimately makes it in front of the commission.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we need to take that list, I mean, we'll have to cull it, you know. I mean, there's going to be, I mean, soliciting, you know, without too much structure, soliciting for ideas, we'll have to respond to all the ideas. Like, we can't just,
What's the mechanism for solicitation?
Well, I think the easiest way is email the board.
And you can do that from the Livingston City Conservation Board webpage. There's a button that just says email the board, and that will email our group. That's the easiest way because it's kind of a long email address, but.
Yeah, it's Livingston MT Conservation Board @groups.io, and that goes to all the board members. All the emails are public, which I hope people will be aware of. That's,
yeah, it should say that on the. Oh.
One thing, John, I know you know this, in this board, we try to be like ridiculously open. We try not to do anything without public inspection. So we, like, this is all recorded and posted on YouTube.
I think that is absolutely fantastic. I mean, transparency is so deeply connected to the heart of democracy. So that is really, really, really good.
And it makes people uncomfortable sometimes, but it's you know, it's something we've all spent time sitting with and learning to be comfortable with. So
it's good to be reminded, though.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't say certain things.
That's right. Okay, well, I feel pretty I feel pretty great about this discussion. Bill, thank you so much for bringing this and in the way that you did. I think it was just time.
So we should let our other members know that we're giving them homework to essentially read the Montana climate plan, right? And then brainstorm some ideas of what they got out of it, basically. As far as broad ideas for our community, as well as maybe some more targeted things that they feel might be useful. Is that what I'm doing?
Oh, that sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'll do the lighting zones.
Cool. I'll send out obviously the meeting minutes. I'll do that much faster than I have in the last few, because this is a lot of new stuff. So I'll do that tomorrow. And then maybe a pithy solicitation for input. We could, if you know, I don't think we're ready for this. I think we should talk about it in 2 weeks, but we could also just do a press release and ask for input.
Yeah, let's talk about that next time, and maybe we'll have a more nuanced instead of
yeah. 100%.
like, yeah, we'll have a track to follow at that point instead of just reading and researching. At least that's my opinion. At least as far as like a press release to the entire community.
Yep.
It sounds like talking with the other groups would be really valuable before that.
Yep. And then ultimately we'll just, you know, if we can get a funnel of feedback coming into our group, we can then sort of distill that down and present it to the commission with any recommendations we have. But I do think if it's okay to leave it on the table for moving forward, I think moving in the direction of a commission resolution ultimately will be a better long play for this than just doing one topic after another, because we're just a volunteer board. We really can't. I mean, we have a lot of technical expertise, but we also all have jobs.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm ready to bow out. I'm getting sort of hungry for one.
I couldn't imagine why not. Hey, could you imagine if we started at 5:30? This is isn't the 5 o'clock a good start though? Yeah, I have to go also for bedtime for kids. So if everyone's all right with concluding the meeting, we can stop it. All right. So I'm gonna call this meeting adjourned.
Work. So appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
All right.
Thanks for calling in.
For joining us.
All right.
Yep.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay.